Disputes are an inevitable part of life. Disputes come in the form of just little tiffs that you have, like with friends, family. We all know, like, if you have siblings, tiffs with siblings. But disputes also kind of happen everywhere. They happen in the workplace, they happen with employer-employee, landlord-tenant, really kind of anything that's like service-based, more or less. So I thought I would do a video on some of the things that I have observed and I feel help handle and diffuse disputes before they escalate. As an attorney, I typically deal with matters after the dispute has imploded. Not everything is going to result in like legal action being taken, but there's definitely ways that people can improve handling disputes, which has like a specific connotation to it, but really just any disagreements or complaint process. So the first part of handling a dispute is understanding the issue. So if someone's coming to you and they're saying they have some sort of problem, a lot of the times, like I'm trained to articulate in a specific way and I'm presenting an argument to somebody, but definitely when I'm in legal mode and I have to argue, go to court, deal with opposing counsel, write motions, you have to articulate, and you articulate it in a very specific form. The first thing being, here is the issue. So a lot of times when someone is presenting an issue, they don't have the ability to necessarily organize or articulate it in a way you can understand. So you might get maybe a jumble of just like frustration and information thrown at you. The best thing you can do in that is, with all of your might and like your brain power, try to distill the issue into like one sentence that you're gonna repeat back to them. So if they throw something at you, after you hear it, go, I understand, and really acknowledge it, and then, say, I just want to be clear, my understanding is that this is your issue, and then like in one sentence, or a couple sentences, explain it. Usually people will compound and have multiple problems, so you want to articulate as best as you can each one of those points. You just want to understand the problem. I've had so many times where just in life I'm like, I don't get the issue, and I've had to explain it back to them. That's mirroring. That's actually a concept or practice in psychology when you're trying to enhance communication, typically between couples. It's called mirroring. So someone's gonna say something and you go, okay, this is my understanding of what you're saying to me back. So just understanding what the issue at hand is, very important. The next thing is you want to hear the person out. Simply acknowledging someone's issue can go like a long way. I completely understand. Yeah, I hear you. I get that could be really frustrating. When someone goes to submit like a complaint or raise an issue, they often do it already out of frustration. Sometimes people just go, hey, I have this issue, and it's not like a dispute arises when the issue tends to have like aggression behind it. So when someone presents to you some sort of issue, a lot of the times it's with some sort of aggression, frustration behind it. And when you go, hey, I completely understand, or I hear you, that's like really frustrating, you disarm the person right away. Like, and it kind of diffuses their tone. Most people, when they raise a complaint, they expect to be met back with some sort of opposition, and just going, hey, yeah, I can get that could be really frustrating. It tends to calm them down, and they're more receptive to hearing what you have to say. I've had a lot of people deal with I deal with lawsuits. I've had lawsuits where someone didn't acknowledge the other person, how they felt, and the whole thing escalated like off sheer emotion. Well, I didn't want to deal with it, or they were yelling at me. Even if someone's in your face screaming at you, it is extremely hard to not want to scream back at someone. It's hard. Like if someone's coming at you and like you're not even the source of the problem, it's really hard to bite your tongue and try to put yourself in their shoes. But it is definitely a skill that will get you very far in life, personally or business. So definitely acknowledging that their frustration is valid, maybe even if it's not, but that they're frustrated helps diffuse the situation right off the bat. The next thing is you want to determine who's responsible. Disputes usually rise predominantly in service-based settings. If you're providing some sort of service to someone and they're complaining about said service. If someone comes to you and they want you to do something, you want to determine whose responsibility it is. You might not know in that exact moment whose responsibility it is. Someone can say, hey, I'm really frustrated, I want this done, and you might not know if you have to do it or if it's on that person to do it. Like, you don't want to obligate yourself to something that might not be your responsibility, or obligate your employer or the company to something that's not on them. So if you don't know, one of the first things is, hey, I understand that you're frustrated. We want to, work and see if there's a solution that can be had for you. I do have to take the time to research and look into this. I'm going to, take a little memo, take some notes right now on what you're saying, and then I'll have to look into it. If you've ever called like any customer service phone line, that's kind of the process, so you already know. So write down the issue and write down as much as you can from them, get as many details as you think are pertinent to them, to the issue, so that you can, you're not going to remember everything, so write it all down. Like, I can't stress that enough. That's why I have like so many to-do lists. I just can't hold everything in my head. I have a pretty good memory. So write down as much as you can the information you need. Keep acknowledging, I'm really sorry, I really apologize, this is inconveniencing you. Definitely going to look into this and get back to you. That kind of, if they're like really pissed off and you really can't diffuse them, that gives some breathing room. The next thing in determining who's responsible, so in the same prong, is looking at, the contract or guidelines or manual, whatever it is. Typically there's some sort of contract. So you want to figure out what the contract says. There might be a specific consumer law about this, something like that. So you want to look at what's governing this relationship and consult that. So if there's a contract and they're coming at you and they're really frustrated, but it's outside the scope of what you were required to do, and then you're well within your right to go, hey, that's not what we were supposed to do. However, maybe provide them some sort of solution. If it's something that you can do, but maybe it's going to cost more, or if you can point them in some sort of direction, like, oh, you might want to look into hiring this person, or you might be able to do it this way. Determine who's responsible, and if it's not you, then try to, as best as you can, direct them in some way that they can resolve it. If you know how they can resolve it for themselves, you can also just give them the solution. I think it was the IT crowd or the IT crowd. I never knew what the title of the show was, but they were the IT department. So like everyone upstairs would always call them and they would say, have you turned the computer on and off? So it could be something is like, here's the thing that you can do that will resolve this thing. That's like well within your power. As long as you provide some sort of solution, unfortunately, that's outside the scope of what we were to do. If you want us to do that, it would be, X amount of charge, or that's outside the scope to do. We won't handle that. However, you could look into hiring, this person, you can look this up, in reviewing the files, it appears that this is something that falls on you, and here's what you could do to try to resolve it. Again, determining who's responsible for it. And if you don't know in the immediate moment, don't immediately give an answer to commit yourself to something that's maybe not your responsibility. Look into it and then provide a follow-up. Again, always acknowledge, like, I'm so sorry, this is frustrating. I think sometimes we hate hearing that, but it's like, what can one do? And then try to be pleasant. The next thing is take a break. So let's say you're in an exchange with someone on the phone, typically how it goes, or maybe email or text message and you're going back and forth about something. If you've reached an impasse, there's a point in time where it's like a diseconomies of scale, where you're just going to keep talking more and more, and it's not going to produce any sort of solution or outcome that's going to work for both of you. So at some point, if someone's like screaming at you or going off on you, you're well within your right to be like, hey, I know I'm going to have to like get off the phone. I'm going to have to take a break from this, look into it. I'll get back to you when I know more information. But take a break. Taking a break provides actually two benefits. One, gives you a chance to clear your thoughts and look into the matter and figure out if maybe there's another solution that, wasn't presented in the call, but you've had time to like actually think about it. You go, oh, there's maybe an easy way to do this. And it allows the other person to calm themselves down. Most of the time when someone comes to you and they're complaining and they want you to address something, it's in their best interest to cooperate with you at some point, because in their mind, you're the one who has the solution. So like, I'm coming to you because I have this problem, and at first I'm going to be really aggressive about it, and when my aggression doesn't work, then I'm gonna have to like backpedal and be a little bit nicer. So they're hoping that you are gonna provide the solution for them. So it's in their best interest to actually cooperate with you to get the end result of whatever thing that they want done. Because I wouldn't be a lawyer without saying this, document. So let's say you get some sort of phone call from someone, there's some sort of issue, maybe you've come to the conclusion right there on the phone, this is what's going to go on, or maybe you don't know and you have to do research. You should document throughout the process. So, hey, thank you for giving me a call, per our conversation, this is the issue. We're going to look into it, get back to you, or here's the issue, here's what we discussed would be the resolution, and here's going to be the next steps, and leave, pertinent information, dates, times, people, whatever, and document it. Document a text message or an email. Even if you reach the resolution on the phone and it was more or less amicable, you definitely want to document document it so that there's something, that there's some sort of record. You complain about this, and this is the solution that we came up with. We're okay with it. If they don't respond to it, disputing it, it's more or less an admission on them that, okay, this is what we came to the conclusion. This was the solution. If they have some sort of dispute, or they, change something, or they want to add something, then you can document through the text message or the email. Documentation is super important. I could go on and on about why documentation is super important, but I think everybody at this point knows why that's super important. Last point then I'm going to make is, it's not the end of the world. I wish I understood that. Maybe even also understand it. I wish I understood that at a much younger age. Like, things are not the end of the world. Like, they're just not. Most things are not extremely urgent. They can be, but most things don't have to be resolved in the immediate moment. And I have the habit where, like, I want things done now. Like, I don't want to deal with it tomorrow. I don't want to add to-do list. I don't have to follow up with it. I don't have to remember. I want it now. But not everything can be solved now. Like, it can't. And it's not worth your own mental health to stress over things. Like, if it's out of your control or can't be resolved immediately, or it's not life-threatening, it's not extremely urgent, like civilization won't collapse around you, like, it's okay. You can't always convince the other person on the other side making the complaint that it's going to be okay, but you have to just live with that on your own. And, like, you can take a break. If you feel like your brain hurts and you're tired, it's okay. Like, give yourself a break. This is just like, a tangent on that, but like, don't be overly harsh on yourself about things. Like, I have that in me, so that's why I try to, like, I'm sure other people do. A few little bonus tips in dealing with disputes: don't yell. Like, if someone's screaming at you, it takes every fiber of your being, but don't yell back. Like, don't do it. That happened to me once, where a tenant called me and they were screaming at me about a rent check. I called and I said, hey, your rent check didn't come in. Can you please send a new one? She was screaming. She had awful things. She was cussing at me, accusing me of all sorts of stuff. I go, hey, I understand, it's in the evening and you're tired. If you could just look into your rent check, that would be great. I'm not issuing any sort of eviction notice. I'm just calling you to give you a heads up. I would appreciate if you could send your portion of the rent. She called back 15 minutes later and apologized profusely. And she was like, I am so sorry. You're correct. Like, the check never got to you, hasn't been cashed. And I'm so sorry for screaming at you, but I'm very impressed how you just handled yourself and you didn't scream back. And I think about that, like, exchange a lot. And I actually saw the tenant several times, and she reminded me, remember the time I screamed at you? I go, yeah, I remember it very well. So don't yell. Having, like, ownership over your own behavior, your attitudes, is extremely empowering, and not letting someone bring that out on you is a skill that I think everybody should work really hard at having. But it definitely brings a lot more peace of mind. Another thing, don't cave to threats. So if they threaten you, I'm going to sue you, I'm going to report you to XYZ government agency, I'm going to leave you a bad Yelp review. I've had people leave me Yelp reviews that were never my clients. I have people leave me bad Yelp reviews or Google reviews like I've never met. Like, I don't even know who they are. It really, really bothers me. It bothered me when it happened, but like, they can do what they can do. Google has a very liberal policy about it. There's free speech laws. So, hey, like, you just have to let it go. Don't cave to threats. Don't feel overly intimidated. Like, if you feel like something is not your responsibility, if someone starts threatening you with taking steps to escalate it, you don't have to necessarily cave to it. If you feel like you need to get an attorney, reach out to an attorney. If you feel like they're going to report you to the government and some sort of government agency, that they have the rights to do that. You can't really stop them from doing it. But it's borderline extortion, which I'm not going to use that in any sort of legal sense, but someone's threatening you could be a form of extortion, depending on how the whole scene plays out. If they start, like, threatening, like, they're going to hurt someone like yourself or someone you care about, you yourself should report that for your own safety. But don't cave to it. Don't immediately concede that you have to do something that you feel like you don't have to do or you don't feel comfortable doing, and terminate the conversation if they start to make threats. Usually people will start to make threats, and then you terminate the conversation, and they come back realizing that that was a tactic that did not work on you. And then the last thing I will leave you with is to just be positive. Try to stay positive throughout the whole process, and remind yourself and the person that you're dealing with that, like, a solution will come. It might not be exactly what you want, it might not be exactly what they want, but at some point this thing will be resolved. Like I said earlier, it's not the end of the world, but stay positive, mostly for your own mental health. So that's all I have on this one. If you liked this video, video. You might also like my video on landlord-tenant dynamics. It's a little bit more specific of a topic, but touches on a few similar things. Thanks for watching. If you like to be informed about certain things and like to get tidbits of information from me, I do have a newsletter. The link will be below. Comes out every Sunday. It's free and you might enjoy it. Otherwise, thanks for watching this one. I'll see you in the next one.